Arab executive found an African woman inside a box in the desert. What he saw made him cry. He wasn't supposed to stop. The heat was unbearable, the sandstorm just minutes away, and his convoy had strict orders to keep moving. But something made him pull over, a feeling, a flicker in the corner of his eye. There, half buried in the sand, was a wooden box barely large enough to hold a person. At first, he thought it was debris, but when he opened it, what he saw made him fall to his knees. Inside was a woman, African, barely breathing, her skin dry, lips cracked, wrists bound by old rope. But it wasn't just her condition that made him cry, it was what she whispered the moment their eyes met. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more emotional and powerful stories like this one. What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about compassion, dignity, and the courage it takes to love what others have thrown away. The sun was merciless that morning, even by Rub al-Khali standards. Heat shimmered off the dunes like glass, and the wind carried whispers of ancient things long buried beneath the sand. For Tariq al-Najjar, CEO of the multi-billion-dollar Najjar Energy Group, this was supposed to be a routine inspection of a new solar installation site. He wasn't here for sentiment. He was here for data, deadlines, and progress. But fate had other plans. Tariq was seated in the back of a heavily armored Land Cruiser, his tailored white dish dasha spotless, despite the dust swirling outside. His assistant, Fahim, was reading off logistical updates, while two guards monitored the dunes from the front. As they drove, something in the distance caught Tariq's eye. Something small and out of place. A shape, rectangular, faintly colored. "Stop the car," he said suddenly. Fahim looked up. "Sir?" "I said stop." The vehicle came to a slow halt, tires pressing deep into the hot sand. Tariq opened the door, stepping out into the oppressive heat. The guards followed closely behind, hands near their weapons. But Tariq wasn't thinking about danger. He walked toward the shape with growing unease. It was a wooden box. Weathered, cracked, nails sticking out at odd angles. Nothing about it belonged here. He crouched beside it and placed his hand on the top. It was warm. Too warm. Something had been baking inside. Then he heard it. A sound so faint he almost thought it was the wind, a soft, hoarse gasp. "Bring me water! Now, Tom!" he barked over his shoulder. Tariq pried open the box slowly, heart pounding. Inside, curled up and barely moving, was a woman, African, perhaps mid-20s, her skin dust-covered and dry, her black hair matted to her forehead. Her eyes were swollen from the heat, but they blinked at him once. Alive. "Ya Allah," he whispered. She was tied at the ankles and wrists. Her clothes were torn. There were bruises along her arms. And still, somehow, she managed to whisper two words. "Don't hurt me." Tariq felt the breath leave his lungs. He had seen poverty. He had written checks to foundations. He had attended world summits on refugee crises. But never, never had he seen someone discarded like this, like garbage left to die under the sun. He reached into the box and gently lifted her out. She was lighter than he expected. Fragile. He could feel her ribs through her thin frame. She winced at the touch, but didn't resist. "Water," he said again, this time softer. Fahim handed him a bottle. Tariq opened it and held it to her lips, carefully tilting it so only a few drops touched her tongue. She coughed but swallowed. "We need to get her out of here," he told the guards. "Find shade. Call the medic team. Now." The woman clutched his sleeve with what little strength she had. Her eyes locked onto his. Something unspoken passed between them. Terror, desperation, and something else. Hope? "Who would do this to her?" Fahim asked, voice hollow. "I intend to find out," Tariq replied. The guards set up a shade tarp quickly, and a small cot was placed beneath it. A portable IV was connected to her arm. Tariq never left her side. He held her hand even as she drifted in and out of consciousness, whispering in Arabic and English, unsure if she understood either. He didn't even know her name. But he knew this much. She had not ended up in that box by accident. Someone had put her there, and someone would answer for it. As the convoy resumed their course, rerouting to the nearest field hospital, Tariq sat beside her in the back seat, cradling her head gently against his shoulder. The desert, vast and cruel, had given him power and wealth, but today it gave him something else entirely. A question he couldn't ignore, and a life he was now responsible for saving. The makeshift field hospital was located inside a prefabricated structure near the edge of the Najjar solar development. Though its purpose was to handle heat stroke and minor construction injuries, today it served a far more urgent role. Tariq paced the corridor outside the recovery room, his white thobe now dusty, his forehead glistening with sweat that had nothing to do with the heat. Malik, the lead medic, finally stepped out, pulling off his gloves. "She's stable," Malik said. "Severely dehydrated, malnourished. There's evidence of physical trauma, but no internal bleeding. She'll need days to regain full strength." Tariq exhaled deeply. "Can I see her?" Malik nodded. "She's awake, barely speaking, but she keeps asking for a window. We gave her one next to the bed." Tariq entered quietly. The woman was sitting upright now, propped by pillows, a blanket covering her frail body. Her skin had regained a bit of tone, and her breathing no longer rattled. But her eyes, dark, wide, cautious, watched him like a cornered animal. He approached slowly. "I'm not here to harm you," he said, voice low and calm. "My name is Tariq. I'm the one who found you in the desert." She blinked once, then again. Her lips moved, barely forming words. I remember." Her accent was West African, possibly Nigerian or Ghanaian, he guessed. Her voice was faint but melodic, like wind brushing dry grass. "Do you know your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. More instinct than certainty. "That's okay," Tariq said. "It'll come back." She looked out the small window. Sunlight streamed in, warming her face. She closed her eyes as if memorizing the feeling. He pulled a chair close to her bed. "Do you remember how you ended up there? In the box?" She flinched. Her body recoiled like she'd been struck. Tariq immediately raised his hands. "I'm sorry. No more questions." Silence stretched between them. Then just above a whisper, she said, "I ran." That one word hit him harder than expected. "From what?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes glassy. "A place with trucks, men. They bought girls." Tariq's jaw clenched. He had heard whispers of these routes, illegal migration lines where women were smuggled like cargo across borders, promised fake jobs, only to be sold into servitude. She wasn't just lost, she was escaped. "I think someone saw me," she continued, "and locked me in the box. To punish, to kill maybe." Tariq's throat tightened. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she came from, but she was under his sky now, and that made her his responsibility. "I will protect you," he said. "I swear it." She looked at him again, this time with something more than fear. Trust. Just a flicker. But it was there, he stood. "I'll have my team bring clothes. A translator, if you'd prefer. We'll take it slow. You're safe now." As he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. "My name..." He turned. Her lips trembled. "I think it's Paula." The name hung in the air, fragile as glass. He smiled softly. "Paula," he repeated. "It suits you." She smiled faintly in return, the first time her face held something other than pain. Outside the room, Fahim was waiting. "We've been asking around discreetly," he said. "No reports of missing women. But some of the local contractors, they're connected to traffickers. They won't speak unless we force them." Tariq's face hardened. "Then force them." "But that would put the company in the spotlight." "I don't care," Fahim hesitated. "Sir, you are not responsible." "I am," Tariq snapped, "because it happened on my land." Later that night, as the desert wind howled against the walls of the field hospital, Tariq sat by Paula's bedside. He watched her sleep and swore silently that whoever had treated her like nothing would soon learn the price of discarding a life, especially now that she had found someone who refused to look away. The following morning, the air outside the field hospital was dry and still, the kind of silence only the desert knew how to hold. Inside, the quiet was broken only by the soft rustle of sheets as Paula stirred beneath the light cotton blanket. Her body was healing, but Tariq could see that her mind was still trapped in a maze of fear. He had learned in business and in war that wounds of the soul were the slowest to mend. He brought her breakfast himself. She looked surprised to see him with the tray. "You shouldn't do this." "I should do many things," he replied with a smile. "But this one, I want to do." He set the tray beside her. Warm flatbread, dates, honey, and a small bowl of fruit. She eyed it warily. "You think it's poisoned?" he asked gently. Her eyes met his and the corner of her lip twitched. "I've eaten worse." "Then you'll survive my cooking." She picked up a piece of bread and tore it slowly, chewing with deliberate care. She was stronger than the day before. Her color had improved, and she sat up straighter. Tariq pulled his chair closer. "Fahim found something. A camp, abandoned 2 weeks ago, near the southern ridge. Matches your description. Trucks, empty crates, chains." She paused. "It's still there?" "No, they cleared it, like ghosts in the night." She swallowed hard. "I told you, they sell girls. Promise them Dubai or Kuwait, and when the trucks stop, the promises vanish." Tariq listened, fists tightening in his lap. "Do you remember their names?" "No names," she said. "Only voices, hands, orders in Arabic and French." He nodded. "You said you ran. How?" "I jumped from a truck. They didn't know until the next stop. I hid near a ridge. A man found me." Her voice dropped. "He beat me, tied me, said I was useless now. He put me in the box." Her hand trembled as she reached for a date. Tariq didn't speak. What could he say? That the world was cruel? That men like her captors were the exception, not the rule? Words were useless in the face of that kind of pain. Action would speak louder. He rose. "I want to show you something." She looked startled. "I can't walk yet." "I'll carry you." She hesitated, then nodded. Gently, he wrapped her in a shawl and lifted her into his arms. She was light, her bones still brittle, but she didn't resist. Outside, the morning sun was climbing, but the heat was still soft. He brought her to the edge of the ridge near the hospital, where the horizon stretched like gold over endless dunes. A team of engineers was working far below, installing panels, shouting instructions in multiple languages. "This land," he said quietly, "made me rich, richer than I ever imagined. But yesterday it taught me something I'd never learned in boardrooms." She turned her face toward him. He went on, "I always believed success was measured in how many buildings carried my name. Now I think maybe it's how many lives you don't ignore." She didn't answer at first, then, "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A prince," she whispered, "polished, untouchable." He laughed softly. "I've been called worse." They sat there in silence. The wind brushed her face gently. Her eyes watched the skin. "You think they'll come looking for me?" she asked after a while. "I think they already are," he said honestly, "but they'll find me first." She closed her eyes. "That doesn't scare you?" "No," he said, "because I know how to fight, and now I have a reason to." Back inside the hospital, Fahim was waiting. "I have something," he said in a low voice. "Satellite footage. One of our drones picked up a convoy matching her description. The plate numbers are military grade. Fake. But they stopped at one of our water stations 5 days ago." Tariq nodded. "They're closer than we thought." He turned back to the room where Paula rested, now asleep in the warmth of the light. "They're coming," he whispered. "But this time we choose the battlefield." Night fell across the dunes like a curtain of obsidian. The heat gave way to biting cold, and the wind hissed through the ridges with a voice that seemed to whisper forgotten names. Inside the temporary command tent erected beside the hospital, Tariq sat surrounded by screens, maps, and silence. The hum of electricity was constant, so was the weight in his chest. Fahim returned from the city outpost carrying a thick file. "Interpol," he said, "unofficial. They've been tracking a syndicate moving girls through Mauritania, Niger, and Saudi. Routes are old Bedouin lines, invisible to most." Tariq flipped the folder open. Images of trucks, satellite shots of men with blurred faces, warehouse blueprints, codes, and a list of recovered names, most crossed out. Deceased, missing. At the bottom, one identified female, mid-20s, found in desert by Najjar Energy convoy. "That's her," Tariq said. Fahim hesitated. There's more. Someone on our payroll logistics division was rerouting supply shipments to these camps. It was hidden in petroleum cargo manifests. Tariq's jaw clenched. Who? Yusuf Arif. Hired 3 years ago. No red flags until now. Tariq pushed away from the table. Where is he? Gone. Disappeared 2 nights ago. Of course, the moment Paula survived, the clock had started. They knew she could talk, even if she hadn't yet, even if her memories were buried beneath trauma, bruises, and silence. Her presence alone was a threat. Tariq stepped outside the tent and looked toward the medical building. A single light glowed from her window. She hadn't slept much. He entered without knocking. She was sitting up, hugging her knees, staring at the floor. Bad dreams? He asked gently. They weren't dreams, she said, not looking at him. He sat down across from her, not too close. I want to ask you something, he said. She nodded. When you were in that truck before they locked you in the box, did anyone ever mention a name, a place, a code word, anything that felt out of place? She blinked, thinking. Her brow furrowed. Al-Rima, she said slowly. Tariq leaned in. What's Al-Rima? A man said it, arguing, said, move them to Al-Rima by Friday. Then he slapped me, told me I didn't hear anything. Tariq stood. You just gave me more than 1,000 files did. He moved toward the door. Tariq? Her voice stopped him. Yes? Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't owe me anything. He turned, voice quiet. Because once, I was the one no one saved, and I made a promise to myself. If I ever stood tall again, I'd never let anyone else sink without reaching for them. She stared at him. Her eyes said more than her words could. That night he called in a private team, not from the company, but from his past. Former intelligence contacts, men who owed him favors not measured in money, but in honor. By morning they had coordinates, a desert town, remote, unregistered, Al-Rima. It wasn't on official maps, but it existed. Old camel routes, a deep well, and if the reports were right, a fortified warehouse guarded by ex-militia. I'm going, Tariq said. Fahim objected. You're not trained for this anymore. I'm not sending men into danger I won't walk through myself. Fahim sighed. Then I'm coming with you. Tariq nodded. Before leaving, he visited Paula one more time. You don't need to come, he told her, but you deserve to know. I think we found the place. I want to see it, she whispered. He hesitated. It's dangerous. I want to remember what they tried to erase. And in that moment, he saw her, not as a victim, but as a woman reclaiming her voice. He nodded. Then we go together. As the sun rose again over the dunes, 3 armored vehicles departed from the Najjar base, carving a path through silence. Inside one of them sat a billionaire. Beside him, a survivor. And in front of them, a reckoning. Al-Rima was a scar in the sand. Not a town, not a village, just a cluster of rusted buildings clinging to the edge of nowhere. The wind there didn't whistle. It groaned, dragging dust across broken doors and walls, blackened by sun and silence. To any outsider, it looked abandoned, forgotten. But as Tariq's convoy approached from the North Ridge, his instincts tightened like a wire in his chest. This was no ghost town. It was a mouth closed tight around buried secrets. The vehicle stopped on a hill overlooking the settlement. Tariq, dressed in tactical gear over his traditional robe, stood next to Fahim, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Beside them, Paula sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes fixed on the ruins below. That building, she said, pointing, the one with the blue roof, that's where they kept the girls. Tariq's blood chilled. How many? He asked. At least 8, maybe more. They moved them often. Fahim lowered the drone controller. Motion detected, 2 men walking perimeter, light arms. But there's a larger signal at the back, possibly a truck idling underground. Could be preparing to move again. Tariq didn't wait. We go now. Quiet, no noise. We don't give them time to run. His private security team moved like shadows. 5 men, ex-special forces, no emblems, no names. They had worked for heads of state, but this mission was personal. ordered not from a throne, but from a promise. The team split, circling wide to block escape routes. Tariq, Fahim, and Paula took the central path, walking behind an old crumbled wall until they reached the compound's edge. Paula stopped suddenly. "What is it?" Tariq asked. She pointed to the sand near her feet. "That's where I fell, when I jumped from the truck." Her voice was distant, as if speaking from another time. "They chased me," she said. "One man shot at me. I think he missed on purpose. I hid near the rocks. When they caught me, they said I cost them money." Tariq's jaw clenched. "They won't make money from anyone else." They entered the building through a side door. Inside, the stench hit first. Old sweat, mold, something fouler beneath. Stacked crates lined the walls, marked with coded labels. The blue roof filtered soft light into the room, casting a pale hue over the concrete floor. Then came the voices. Soft, muffled, female. Tariq signaled to the guards. They followed the sound into a locked storage room. A heavy padlock hung from a rusted latch. One of the guards stepped forward with bolt cutters. Snip. The door creaked open. Inside, 7 girls, some barely teenagers, sat huddled in the corner, blankets wrapped tight around their bodies. They didn't scream. They didn't move. They had learned not to. Paula stepped in first. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now. We're not them." One of the girls, no older than 15, stood slowly. Her eyes met Paula's, and then, like something broke open, she rushed forward and collapsed into her arms. Behind them, Tariq stood still, eyes burning. This was the price of silence. Suddenly, a shout rang out outside, then a gunshot. Everyone froze. Fahim ran in. They tried to flee through a tunnel. 1 man down, 2 captured, 1 escaped. The driver. Tariq didn't flinch. "Track him. I want his face on every border checkpoint by nightfall." Paula turned to him. "They have documents. Hidden in the back office." Together, they moved toward the rear, where an old steel cabinet stood. Inside were passports, fake IDs, wire transfer receipts, even photos. Evidence. Names. Faces. Tariq took it all, and as they exited the building with the girls now bundled into the vehicles, he turned back once more and looked at the empty compound. The desert had hidden its shame for too long. Not anymore. Back in the convoy, as they drove towards safety, Paula sat beside him. "You kept your promise," she said. He looked at her, no longer frail, no longer afraid. "No," he replied. "We kept it." But deep inside, he knew. 1 man had escaped, and the story wasn't over yet. 2 days had passed since the rescue at Al Rima, but neither Tariq nor Paula had known peace. The girls were safe now, fed, clothed, held in the safety of a discreet Najjar medical facility guarded like a fortress. International organizations had already reached out, praising the anonymous operation that brought them out. But Tariq didn't care for praise, because 1 man had vanished, the driver, the one who had tied Paula, the one who knew her name before she remembered it herself. Tariq hadn't slept since Al Rima. He had returned to the capital and turned his penthouse into a war room. Every screen glowed with images, surveillance footage, customs logs, ID databases. His team was running facial recognition software against every known alias connected to the trafficking ring. But it was Paula who found the key. She had spent the morning in the archives room reviewing the recovered documents. While most of the girls avoided the past, she faced it head on, and that's when she saw the photo. A group shot, men with rifles, crates in the background, a blurry truck license plate, and at the edge of the frame, him. Paula walked into the war room holding the photo like it burned. "That's him," she said, voice quiet but steady. "His name was Zuberi." Tariq took the photo, scanned it, enhanced it. Fahim looked over his shoulder. Zuberi al-Dahir, smuggler, former soldier, known aliases in Mali and Algeria. We just missed him at the southern border checkpoint. He bribed his way through posing as a traitor. Tariq's voice was ice. Where was he headed? Tunisia, boat charter scheduled in 2 days. If he gets to Europe, we'll lose him. Tariq turned to Paula. "You don't have to be part of this." She stared at the screen. I am part of this. He nodded. Then we finish it. They took a private jet that afternoon. No media, no announcements. By nightfall, they were in Tunis, connected with Tariq's private intelligence contacts. The city was alive with noise and lights, but beneath the surface was another world. Quiet, cruel, hidden. Zuberi was hiding somewhere in it. The next morning, a tip came through. An old fishing warehouse by the docks had been rented in cash 2 nights ago by a man matching Zuberi's build. No ID, no trace, just shadows. By dusk, they were watching from a rooftop across the street. Tariq looked through binoculars. The man was there, leaning against a wall, smoking, relaxed, like he had no idea justice had come for him. I want him alive, Tariq said. No mistakes. Fahim nodded to the security team, but before they could move, Paula stepped forward. Let me go in first. Tariq turned to her, startled. Absolutely not. I need to see him, she said. He took everything from me, and I want to look him in the eyes before it ends. Tariq hesitated, then nodded slowly. You'll have backup every second. Paula walked down the alley with a scarf over her head, shoulders squared. The moment she stepped into the warehouse, Zuberi looked up. His eyes widened. You, he whispered. She didn't flinch. You were supposed to die in that box. Paula stared at him, her voice calm. But I didn't. I lived. And now, I remember. Before he could reach for his weapon, Tariq's team stormed in, guns drawn. Zuberi was tackled to the ground, face pressed into the dirt. Tariq entered last, looking down at the man who had haunted her. You made one mistake, Tariq said. You underestimated the one thing that cannot be broken. Zuberi spat. What? Tariq looked at Paula, who stood silently behind him. Her. They handed Zuberi over to Interpol that night. No bribes, no loopholes. He would face trial in 4 countries. And this time the world would hear every name he tried to bury. On the flight back, Paula sat beside Tariq, the city lights fading below them. It's over, she whispered. He looked at her, his voice soft. No, it's just beginning. Because what they had started wasn't just revenge, it was redemption and a new life for both of them. The sky over Riyadh was pale gold as the plane touched down. The city below sparkled with ambition, towers of glass, streets humming with motion, a skyline built by power and persistence. Yet inside the car speeding away from the airport, the mood was quiet, thoughtful. Tariq sat beside Paula in the back seat, his suit sharp, his hands folded neatly in his lap. But there was tension in his jaw, in his eyes as they flicked toward her now and then, as if confirming she was still truly there. She looked out the window, watching the world pass, so different from the prison of sand and shadows where she had come from. The light hit her skin differently now, not because of makeup or clothes, but because something inside her had changed. She had survived, and now she had a name. When they reached the Najjar Foundation headquarters, Paula was stunned. The building was sleek, modern, with a vast garden at the entrance. There were no cameras, no journalists, just a polished plaque with gold lettering that made her stop and blink. The Paula Center for Dignity and Protection. Her hand trembled as she touched it. Tariq watched from behind her, his voice calm but firm. It opens in 2 weeks. Safe housing, education, and legal aid for every girl we can find. No application process. No papers required. Just one rule. They must walk through the door with their heads held high. Her throat tightened. Why, my name? Because it belongs to someone who reminded me what dignity means. Someone who chose to remember when it would have been easier to forget. She turned, emotion flooding her eyes. You didn't have to do this. He stepped closer. I needed to. For you. For them. For the part of myself I nearly buried in gold. Inside the building, final touches were still being made. Shelves were filled with books in dozens of languages. A large wall bore a quote from an African proverb in English and Arabic. When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot hurt you. Paula stood in the center of the room and let the quiet settle around her. For the first time since that box in the desert, she felt safe, not just from others, but from herself, from the fear she had lived with. the shame she had been made to carry. It was gone. That night, as the city lights glowed below the Najjar Tower, she joined Tariq on the balcony of his private suite. The view was breathtaking, but his eyes were on her. "Will you stay?" he asked. "Here, in Riyadh. Help run the center. Speak for the ones still silent." She turned to him. "Do you think I'm strong enough? You're the strongest person I've ever known." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind playing with the edge of her scarf. "I'm scared," she admitted. He smiled. "So am I. Every day. That's how I know I'm alive." She looked at him, truly looked. Not at the wealth, the power, the legend, but the man, the one who had stopped his convoy for a box in the sand, the one who had chosen her when he could have looked away. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For giving me my life back." He shook his head. "You never lost it. You just needed someone to remind you it was yours." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his. There was no need for more words. And in that moment, under the stars, two souls, scarred but not broken, found peace in the simple act of being seen. Not as victim, not as savior, but as equals. As a new dawn stretched across the desert, the story that began with a box buried in sand became something far more powerful. A legacy, a promise, and the start of something no storm could ever erase. 2 months later, Paula sat in a boardroom surrounded by voices that once would have intimidated her. Ministers, CEOs, women in designer suits, men with family crests on their rings. The kind of meeting where decisions were made behind polished doors, over espresso and polished strategy. But now, for the first time, a survivor had a seat at that table. And she wasn't just there to listen. She was leading. Tariq sat to her right, watching silently, respectfully. The room was hers today. He had fought for her presence on this committee, but it was her words that had earned their attention. "This isn't just about rescue," Paula said calmly, her voice steady. "It's about rebuilding lives. We don't need more shelters that close after funding dries up. We need systems, education, identity, restoration, legal support, and most importantly, dignity." The room was quiet. No one interrupted. Her confidence radiated not from rehearsed lines, but from truth lived in flesh and memory. When she finished, a senior official finally spoke. "And you believe the Najjar Foundation can scale this beyond Saudi Arabia?" She nodded. "I don't just believe it, I'm living proof of it." Tariq allowed himself a small smile. After the meeting, they walked together through the marble halls of the ministry. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls, and Paula looked every part of the leader she'd become. A long olive green dress, soft curls framing her face, posture tall, proud. "You were brilliant," Tariq said. She smiled. "I was terrified." "You hit it well." They stepped outside into the heat. The city buzzed with its usual rhythm, but the moment between them felt still, comfortable. He turned to her. "The board voted. They want you to be executive director of the Paula Center full-time, with full control." Her eyes widened. "Me? There's no one better." She took a breath. "I don't want to just be a name on a plaque." "You never were." She nodded slowly. "Then I accept, but on one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "I want outreach programs across Africa, not just rescue, prevention. Girls need to know their worth before someone tries to take it." He extended his hand. "Done." She took it, her grip firm. "Good." Later that evening, back at the Najjar residence, they sat in the garden under a crescent moon. The scent of jasmine floated on the warm breeze. Paula leaned back in her chair, shoes off, sipping mint tea. "You know," she said, "when I was in that box, I thought the world had forgotten me, that I didn't matter, that I would disappear and no one would care." Tariq looked at her gently. "You were wrong." "I know," she said, "but I still carry that silence. It lives under the skin, and sometimes, even now, I hear it." He nodded slowly. "I hear it too. When I lost my company, my brother, my sense of purpose, there were nights I thought I'd never speak again. Not in a way that mattered." They sat quietly, listening to the fountain nearby. But you found your voice, she said. He smiled. I found you. She turned toward him. And what about us? The question hung in the air. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched hers. I don't want to define us by the past. I want us to grow forward, not as savior and saved, but as two people who saw the worst and chose to build something better. She took his hand. I like the sound of that. In the distance, a bell rang, a soft reminder that tomorrow would bring more meetings, more calls, more girls to help. But for now, in that moonlit garden, surrounded by peace they had earned, they simply sat. Two lives, two journeys, and a future no longer shaped by what had been taken, but by everything they were building together. Years later, the Paula Center stood as a symbol of what couldn't be erased. Thousands of girls had passed through its doors, not just rescued, but reborn. Paula became a global advocate, speaking in Geneva, New York, Addis Ababa, always with grace, always with purpose. She wore no titles, only truth. And at her side, quietly but faithfully, was Tariq. They never married, never needed labels. What they built was stronger than paper. It was presence. One afternoon, as they stood on a balcony watching a new class of girls arrive, Paula turned to him. Do you think we've done enough? He smiled. We've just begun. She leaned into him, eyes soft. The past hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into fuel for hope, for others, for each other. And as the desert wind moved gently through the trees, the man who once ruled oil and the girl once left to die found something they never expected. A life not built on wealth, but on meaning. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Let's keep spreading stories of courage, healing, and unstoppable love.